Hello dear friends, welcome to another video of the Never Do Through the GUI what you can do through the CLI channel. I am Vangelis Prokopiou and you are watching ASP.NET Core Web API in Linux for decoupled project setup. So in this video we will see both how to create a .NET Core Web API, but also we will see how we can use this API within our own web project, web application, in order to achieve a decoupled setup, or just include this web API in the domain that we are using in order to use it for our application. If it's not quite clear what I am describing, I am sure that you will understand as the video progresses. So whoever wants to know about this setup can stay here and check the video. So we will start with the basics. The first thing that we have to do in order to achieve this setup is to create a web API application. So what we will do is we will come here to our terminal, to our beloved terminal, and I am in a folder projects.net, and if you check out, this is an empty folder. So we will create a folder to hold our web API, and I will for example create a service directory. We will cd into service. And now we have to create the .NET API, so we will say .NET new web API. This command will create the project for us. As you can see, it is running and it is done. Now if we run .NET run we will see that we indeed have a working application. But now let's open this application with our editor. For me it is Rider. Yes, we want to open them instead of opening the directory. Yes, we want to open the project. So the project is loading. And we have here our project. Now let's run this from the editor and see the result. This is our result. Our application is working and it returns this JSON. Now we want to do some things, because as you can see here, the initial URL is this one, but we want to change this URL and make it API / whatever. So we will change some things in the application for starters, and we will stop the application. And the first thing we want to do is to go to launch settings. We don't want this, and what we want to do is to update these launch URLs, and we will say that we want this to be API and also this launch URL to be API. And also we have to go to the controllers, this controller, the weather controller, and update this also to be API. Now if we rerun our application, you will see now that the URL is localhost with the port /API/weather forecast. So we are good to go with our web API. This is what we want. We will leave it running. We will leave this application running, and now continue to the second part of our setup, which is to create a website, to create a web application. So let's go again here into our terminal, and I will open a new tab. And locally on my machine, all my local websites are located at this URL, at this directory, the www directory in my user's user space. So we have to create our web application. If you have been following my channel, you may have seen that I have scripts that automate such tasks, and I have made a related video about the script that we are going to use now in the past, so you can check that video. So we will just use that script, which is Apache vhost create, and what we have to provide here is the name for our web application. In our case, we will just call it web API. So let's run this script, and as you can see, you can access the site at this URL. So let's copy this link and go to this URL. And let me also disable this. As you can see, we have our local website up and running at this URL. So now we have, let me copy this, let's come here. So we have two applications running. This is our web API, which is a virtual host, and this is a Kestrel server running on our machine on localhost at port 5001 at this URL, and it is serving this data. So what we want to do is we want to incorporate this this service that runs at localhost. We want to be able to call it from our side like this. We want to be able to say API slash, let's just copy the URL. Let's just copy the URL here, and we want to be able to append the API weather forecast URL and be able to access this application from our domain, from our site, the webapi.local.com site. So in order to achieve this, we have to edit our Apache configuration for this virtual host. So this is exactly what we are going to do now. We will come here to the terminal. Let's open a new tab, and we have to go to cd etc Apache, and we want to go to sites available. Here, if we check, these are all configuration files for virtual hosts that exist on my machine. Of course, in a production setup, you also have to create virtual host if you want to host multiple sites. In this case only, because they are running on my local machine, in order for this to work, the script that creates these virtual hosts also adds an entry in my etc hosts file, and we will check that. Hosts. As you can see, for each site you must add an entry in your etc hosts in order for this setup to work. This is a small detail that I am explaining now, because if you try to do it yourselves and it does not work, you may wonder why this virtual host setup is not working on your local machine. So to get back, we have this file which is the configuration for this virtual host, and now what we will do is that we will open this up in order to edit it. So this is the virtual host. We have various declarations like the server name, the document root, etc. Now in here we have to add some things in order for us to be able to incorporate this local service, this local web API, to our domain, as we said. So let's start adding our stuff. We will add them under the document root, and the first thing we have to add is the proxy pass directive, and we have to declare that we want to proxy pass this URL of our website to the running service. HTTPS. The service is running on local host. The port is 5001, and we want to proxy this API request on our site to the API URL of the running service. So this is one entry, and we also have another entry to add, which is proxy pass reverse. So we'll say proxy pass reverse, and we have to add the same thing. So we will say API and HTTPS localhost 5001 API. The second entry is related to the headers. You can check it up in the Apache configuration if you want to. Now, if we leave it like this, though, it will not work, because as you can see, we are redirecting to an SSL enabled URL with HTTPS. So the last bit that we have to add is we have to enable the SSL proxy engine. So what we will say is SSL proxy engine, and what we want to do is enable it. So we will say SSL proxy engine on. This entry will allow us to redirect to HTTPS instead of HTTP. Of course, if you want, because now you are within your own network, when you redirect this request, you can just redirect to the HTTP version of the web API instead of the HTTPS. This is your decision to make. In this case, I decided to redirect to the HTTPS version in order for me to show you that you also have to add this SSL proxy engine on. So now we are ready, so let's save it. Let's modify it and save it, and now we have to restart the Apache. So we'll say sudo systemctl restart Apache 2 systemctl. Okay, we have no error messages, which means that Apache was successfully restarted. And now what we have to do is come again here to our browser, and as you can see, we have the /API/weather forecast URL, which was not working previously. But now if we access this URL, you can see that we are getting the data back from this local service, from the .NET Web API service, which is currently running. So we just incorporated this service within our domain, and we can use it in order to have a decoupled architecture for our web application. So you can use it either in order to build your backend and then use let's say a JavaScript library for the client, for let's say React or Angular or Vue or whatever, or you can just use this web API for other things like accessing other external sources, getting data, and then providing the data to your web application. Now, in order to verify that this data this data for our web API web application is coming from this service, what we will do is we will come here to the service that it is running already, and we will stop it. Now if we come back here and refresh, you will see that there is no localhost .NET Web API running, and if we refresh here, you will see that the service is unavailable because we stopped the service. So let's come back here, let's rerun. It is rerunning. We don't want this browser. Let's close it and let's come here and let's rerun. And again, now you see that while the service is running, we have our data available. So in order to confirm this, let's open up our application and try to fetch this data from the backend. So what we will say is, let's come here and let's come here and let's cd to the web API, cd to public, and let's check the cd to the web folder and check we have an index HTML here. This is the, let me duplicate this. This is what we see here is this index HTML. So what we can do, we can say code index HTML. So we have this index HTML. Let me bring it to you here. This is the index HTML, and let me add this and go to the browser, refresh, and you see that indeed this is what we are working on. And now what we will say, we can use an inline script tag, for example, and say that we want to fetch, we will use the URL, which is this URL /API /weather forecast, and then response .json, and then let's say data, and let's console.log the data. Let's see if we manage to do it without an error. Let's open our console here. Let's run, and as you can see, indeed we have a successful request. We are requesting this URL. Let me delete this and let's see if this works. I suppose it works, yes. And let's do this const URL equals, in order to make sure, and let's say console log the URL, and let's use this URL here. Okay, let's come here, let's refresh. As you can see, we are using a relative URL which requests data from within our domain, which is the webapi.local.com domain, and we are getting back the data which is available through, not here, through this service. This is our data, etc., etc. So this is the request, and as you can see, we managed to achieve what we set out to do. We created a .NET Web API service, and we are using that service within our own web application. So in a real live scenario, in a production scenario, you will have your web application at a specific domain, and with this setup through the Apache proxy, let us have a look at it again. Cat Web API. As you can see, this is the virtual host setup, and what we did was to add these proxy pass directives, which allow us to proxy all the /API requests to our domain, redirect them to this URL of the .NET Web API service that is running on localhost through the Kestrel server. So let me get this off the screen. We don't need that anymore. So in essence, this is all I wanted to share in this video. I hope that you found it useful. But before closing, I want to add another piece of information, and this piece of information is that, of course, currently we have this service running through our IDE, which of course is not the setup that exists in a production environment. Of course, what you will have to do is create an entry, create a service for this, a service entry, let's say, for this service, and let the operating system, the system D, take care of starting and stopping your service. I have done it already in a previous video, this configuration. I will have a link to that video in order for you to check out how you can achieve that. So when you create this system service, your service will be handled by the operating system. You will have a running service, and then automatically your web application will have access to the data that this service provides. So to get back, this is all I wanted to share in this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like the content of this channel. Thank you for watching and have a great day.